Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Mike's Mac Shack. Today we have a special guest and some other random dude that just decided to show up here with us today to discuss some of the intricacies of IBM and their PS2 line, among other things. So today I'd like to introduce David from the IBM Museum.
Hi, everybody.
This man is an expert on IBM things, even more so than myself. So he's the one I always ask for help. And this guy here just showed up because he wanted to feel special.
You said IBM
from Mac84 as well.
I misunderstood. I thought you said Apple.
Well, I mean, this is kind of Apple related, seeing as how IBM's the one that designed the PowerPC CPU.
Yes. So, okay. You sold me.
That's how we crossed this over.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, it's always a pleasure with you, Steve. So this stream here is actually, believe it or not, the brainchild of some strange random person by the name of Jay, who is in the chat. This was actually his idea. He's like, hey, you should have a stream with that David guy. He seems to know what he's talking about more than you. I said, well, yeah, you're probably right. So here we go. So Jay's here, Garth is here. I'm probably going to mispronounce this. Gekon CZ,
and that's Major Tom.
Oh, okay. Hello.
From the art school.
Chris is here, and Vic the Vicar is here. And yes, I won't PS2 it today, but I will eventually. So part of my PS2 is sitting at Steve's house. So why don't you introduce yourself, Dave, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on.
Yeah, and I want to provide an update as well for my channel because
knock yourself out.
I've not had any of my live streams, or I've been participating in yours, of course, that have come up at times, but have not done any live streams, have not really done any videos at all for the last 6 months. And this ultimately around me is the reason. I'm in my office now. And the reason I stopped doing the live streams on Saturday mornings in particular, I had a nice little window that I often did that was 4 hours earlier than this on Saturdays. I'd get up and do that live stream for an hour or two. And but I had to do some intensive training back in July of this year, and to get some computer certifications to get employed. And that just we normally did at least 8 hours of in very fast-paced Zoom meetings on both Saturday and Sunday during that time frame. So it was intense enough that I really just couldn't maintain the channel. I should have actually made more postings saying what I was up to and everything else, but the people knew I'd get back to it, and I'm kind of waiting back in at this point to go through, and it's an excellent opportunity for me to provide and get back what's been going on, and also get back in the ring to doing a live stream again, participating in a live stream, at least here. I'm able to read comments, I think with probably the format of how we're doing the collaboration here. I don't have an account on there, so I don't think I'm able to make comments from here, but we'll just kind of address that as we can. So, and happy to have Steve here as well. I've, I always follow Mike's streams, even though he's especially for the times that he's deviated off of being Mike's Mac Shack. And
more often than not lately, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then but I want you to know you can just do a slight swap of letters and you can become Mike's MCA Shack for microchannel architecture.
That's dangerous.
Well, if I
Yeah.
had more microchannel machines on,
Yeah,
trust me, that would be very, very tempting.
your channel, which is always a kind of interesting thing with YouTube. Now, that's part of the news I have as well. If you actually go to the handle at YouTube of IBM Museum, the @ and IBM Museum altogether, you'll be directed to a channel that really doesn't have. I think I posted a security camera or a dash cam video the other day on there, but it's got 2 subscribers, and I'm one of them from my other channel. But that is a channel that I'm looking to actually build up. That's going to go through. We'll be receiving new content um, in place of the one that has the space. And of course, for the handle of that, it's at IBM_museum. And I like the moniker that's actually all together as one word better. And let me tell you why. My Twitter account, that is IBM Space Museum, has been suspended. Twitter saw it in its heart a few months ago and went through and said I was trying to impersonate IBM. So they went through and they nixed that Twitter. And that was actually when I was visiting Dallas back more than a year ago. I mistakenly created that handle on Twitter as well, that account. That was a newer account, just trying to make a post and everything else. And I could have corrected it and everything else. I chose to kind of have my Twitter account that is IBM Museum, all as one word, is perfectly fine. And I put the posting there on Twitter to say, no, Twitter, I'm not impersonating IBM on this channel at all. Leave me be. When it's combined, IBM Museum, it's a little bit less likely to get those infringement notifications and things like that, which I'll talk about another aspect here soon. And I've explained on my live streams in the past that the name, the moniker I use, the nickname IBM Museum, comes from, I gave a tour back decades ago to a guest at my house. And she came down the stairs. And I think she even worked for IBM at one point. And that was the reason I gave her the tour, to show her, hey, I have all these systems down here. And she said, it looks like an IBM museum down here, seeing all the PS2s and everything else that I had around. And so the moniker stuck. That's the moniker I've gone under for probably close to 25 years. You can see it change on the CIF news group, the comp.sys.ibm.ps2.hardware news group. And that was where all the hobbyists have accumulated, years ago, starting there in the mid to late 90s, and was actually a very active news group. And it still is active enough. And that's comp.sys.ibm.ps2.hardware. And
I still get
Mike
emails.
has brought it up.
I still get an email at least once a day for the new posts on there, which is actually pretty surprising for an old news group.
Yes. And news groups in general have faded away, but it's probably one of the more active groups that's still around. I know that there's groups for like OS2 and things like that. And so, but that's a very good place to go through and to find us hobbyists that go through and talk about these systems as well, the IBM PS2s. We're going to go a little bit more specifically about microchannel architecture here in just a moment as well. Now, my other platform that I had liked to be on, and we have two PS2 groups on Facebook. We have one that's dedicated primarily to the microchannel systems and PC servers that have microchannel, and also ESIA bus. And that's generally a catch-all for anything that's microchannel related. It does catch some other systems. We even had a post about an IBM Aptiva today As a moderator, I'm not so worried about that. I'd like people to keep on topic with something that relates to the news group. We also have a separate Facebook group for the PS2, the 8-bit machines, and effectively ISA machines that are the Model 25 and 30. And that generally is a catch-all for other IBM systems that are ISA bus or not necessarily microchannel. And that's actually a public group. I've been kind of the ad hoc moderator in there as well. And as long as that stays generally on topic, I've had a little bit more spam problems and things like that. But here recently, I've been having Facebook troubles. Facebook is going through and has flagged my postings. I complained about some sponsored ads. We're not going to get into that. The AI bot that manages Facebook. There's no people left at Facebook that manage the place. It's all AI, this artificial intelligence that has the last word in banning and blocking and removing posts. And it doesn't do its job to actually take down the scammers, the post, and especially the Facebook sponsored ads that is complained about, because Facebook doesn't allow members to post those pictures I've seen. Yet when I was reporting them, the AI bot saw it fit to go through and block me for a day at a time, 24-hour period. I am now at the point where my posts are being downrated for another 16 days. It's doing a countdown. So over 2 weeks, my posts are supposedly relegated down. And I like participating on Facebook, but the platform, I'm just looking for something else at this point.
Well, in that case, Sean from Action Retro, who's in the chat, he has a Mastodon server that's dedicated to old computers. Maybe that's where we need to move to. Yeah,
and I'm actually on just about every platform out there that I'm aware of as IBM Museum. You can always tag me, or there's ways. I've thought of the old vBulletin software. I know that is has a little bit of cost to it. I know that some places like VCF do a very good job with their forum on the vBulletin software. And it's used in other places as forum software. And it's fine a lot of the time. I need to actually participate more on the VCF forums and Vogons than I do. I haven't been very active there as well either, but that's the way it is. But some of the things, and as the people that went through and watch Mike and Steve on a regular basis saw on one of the was it the last live stream, Mike, that you did, the MC IDE?
Yeah.
And we had an excellent live stream of Steve going through and putting the MC IDE on a PS2 system. I believe a Model 20. It's gonna be Model 50.
Yeah, 50.
Z.
Yep.
Z or non-Z. Okay.
Yeah, because he was too lazy to drag out the 80.
I'm not moving that.
And that's actually been the biggest news on the Facebook channel, the Facebook group of PS2s, is that Mike Malley went through and designed this board that allows you to connect an IDE drive to a microchannel system. And I'll open up my box here in a moment. I should do the masking tape like I sometimes do over the addresses and stuff like that, and pull mine out, because I haven't even unboxed. I mean, this can be a little bit of an unboxing video as well.
Don't want to cut you off there, David, but I do want to mention something I'm sure you are aware of, like you're talking about message boards and such, that there is a community Tinker Different that's fairly new. And so there is a vintage IBM compatible section. I know somebody we could strong arm to add a PS2 section. So that might be a good place to put some posts there and just start building a community, because there's already some people there that I think would fit into that perfectly.
And really, I try and get the word out because, people are interested in meeting up out there. They're interested. They're looking around for information. As I have explained on some of my posts, my live streams, I even on the Facebook group, I got a post one time, and I haven't seen him participate much ever since. But he made a comment in Bengali for the signing up of the group to say, I found a PS2 and I need to fix it. And I had to run that through Google Translate to even determine what it was. But it's like, okay, yeah, I'll let you in the group, because people out there, they need the assistance. They may not be aware of the excellent resource that we have of the Ardent tool. And Major Tom is in the house. He's in the comment section, and I'm not the IBM expert here. Tom is the IBM expert, and especially for what he does with the Ardent tool site, to have that vast resource of systems, software, everything else, everything relating to what the, otherwise even the Facebook group or the SIF news group does, we can direct people at that, at the Ardent tool. Now, I do want to say on the Facebook groups, as I said, there's two groups, mainly for the Microchannel side and the ISA side, or 8-bit bus. It's not Microchannel. And for the PS2 aspect, when we talk about PS2s, everything that's below a Model 50 is not Microchannel. All your PS2 Model 50 and above, if it has a number of 50 and above, is a Microchannel PS2. So that's how you know when you see an obscure model like an N45, you know from there that it's not a Microchannel system, that 45 being below Model 50. So that's, I'm just looking to kind of breast into the Microchannel aspect as well for PS2. So it's not necessarily, PS2 discussion is not necessarily limited to Microchannel, but that's where a lot of the push is these days, or the systems that people are finding for vintage systems. I really enjoy Microchannel because you can do everything with it. You can, there's simple to write little software routines to find out everything about the system, find the attached, what the CPU is there, all these BIOS calls. And at the Ardent tool, we've gone through and we've put all those BIOS images up there, and Major Tom going through and analyzing some of those to discover a lot of stuff that has been hidden or people haven't been aware of over time. So it works out, great that way. And let's do the unboxing, as it were, here. I got my knife, and I can go through, and we did see the MC IDE when Steve put it in his system, but the nice thing, I wanted to show some of these for some people that missed the stream. There's a tag. I think these are even tagged with the serial number somewhere, right?
I'm not sure. Steve's not on right now.
Order 10/50. I think that was their initial batch of 50 adapters. And so I've got adapter number 10 of that batch. And there's going to be some more of these coming out. And I think it's going to be more of a release to the world sort of thing.
Oh yeah, Steve got number 21.
outside even the Facebook going through and being the platform that Mark announced these from. And mine's in a little anti-static bag. I mean, we've seen the adapter. It may not be necessary to bring it out of the bag, but just to make people aware of that, for, that this is kind of been the news on the development side Microchannel that is very active, to where, especially on the heels of all the sound cards that have been developed recently for PS2s. Clint at LGR, I think he has uncomfortable relationship with Microchannel sometimes, and the fact that he gets into it for the gaming aspects, lazy game reviews, and Microchannel not commonly having a sound card back in the day, I think it's been the detraction for him, and now that's all changing, with the aspect of people making sound cards and storage methods to replace these hard drives that are just dying on the PS2s, those proprietary drives that are just, quitting. And so we'll have to see. I'll have to check with Mark Malley on what content we could start putting up about the MC IDE. But getting that covered at the Ardent tool, as well as an option that's out there, and we can go through and kind of study that implementation. Microchannel, as I say, it's a nice platform for me, because I like really going through there and figuring out just the little stuff, and there's a lot of hidden details that we can go through and discover in that. And that's always, I'm just always amazed by that. So, and Major Tom is even making some comments in chat, about that. I want to even get him one of those boards so he can look it over and kind of determine what's going on with it, and kind of give a little bit more detail. So, and I don't want to, this is supposed to be, I don't know what I'm using this time for, really. I don't want to just dominate something and he's the expert and he's going to go through and he's going to talk about 3 hours and Mike and Steve are going to sit off to the side. I don't mean it for it to be that, but I really thank Mike for the opportunity for me to go through and update people on my channel and go through and explain some of the places out there that that you can get help. You have this IBM PS2 that you found, or even a related non-IBM system that's got Microchannel on it. You can still get the answers at the Ardent tool. You can still have all these forum places, to these groups that you can get on to get information about these systems, to get that system up and running. And Major Tom is aware of that, of a recent back channel communication about a Microchannel system, actually a Japanese PS55 system. The PS2s in Japan were actually PS55s, was the series. And some of them, or many of them, have the Microchannel bus, the same constraints as the PS2s, and going through and having someone, get one of those units, and what does it take to get it running? Do we, is there any reference disk that works to configure this machine? What's going to be the process for that? So it's really got some, I'm just amazed on how even recent discoveries have been made, or getting people together to collaborate to get these systems even working again. It just amazes me.
So, Dave, while I got you center screen here, so Steve did ask a valid question. He's having some microphone issues. So for those people who are possibly watching who don't quite understand what we're talking about, can you explain what Microchannel is?
Okay, excellent segue to go through. And by the way, I prodded at Mike to play the song YMCA, at the start of the stream, although that would get copyright violations, infringement violations from YouTube and demonetize and possibly have the stream pulled down for that. But we use that as saying why, the word why, MCA, as in microchannel architecture with the question mark at the end of that. And microchannel. And here I've got the book I brung in, and it's the Microchannel Architecture Handbook. And it's got Win Ross on one side, very prolific writer for the time of, I think he's got, he had some things like with PC Magazine and other places. But on the other side, we have Chet Heath. And this is, I have to figure out all the dynamics to my webcam right now. This is the so-called father of Microchannel. At IBM, he went through and designed the Microchannel bus, I'm sure with a very helpful team of engineers as well. And Chet is, and he's still even on Facebook. I've tried to go through and contact him and talk about, hey, we still go through and we do cover these systems in case you ever want to drop by and just to see if he's has an interest. You will see him on like older episodes of Computer Chronicles is a real common one that he goes through and shows some of the things to the microchannel bus, a second processor on a Model 60, PS2 Model 60, showing the multi-processor bus of microchannel. And I recently had a kind of in a bad way a little bit a discussion on Facebook, and it wasn't on the groups, the any of the PS2 groups. It was on a side group, I think Vintage Computer Club or something like that, and got into the comment, what you often hear from microchannel coming on the scene, and the initial microchannel PS2s as well as the Model 30 were introduced in 1987. IBM felt limited by the ISA bus like the IBM AT had, and knew that computers could be better performance if they were a different bus type. They felt the ISA bus was holding them back for the just really computers growing, expanding, becoming a more dominant thing. And so that's why they went through and created the microchannel bus. Now, often the discussion that you hear out there is whether about the royalties, IBM royalties. And people will say, well, IBM killed it because they killed microchannel effectively because the royalties were too expensive. The companies couldn't pay those royalties, and they just went off and did their own other designs of computers, computer buses, as a competition to microchannel. They didn't want to get on the microchannel bus because IBM wanted so much money for it. You even see the Wikipedia article that has a statement in there of saying expensive royalty fees. And I find that really interesting a lot of time because Wikipedia doesn't like unqualified or unsourced statements, unquantified statements of saying expensive. Well, what is expensive? What's a number for expensive? And so we recently went through and looked at IBM, actually documentation in this book from Chet Heath. And Chet Heath was probably allowed by IBM to go through and, fully reveal some details behind the microchannel bus. So he wasn't just cowboying around and doing his own book. This is viewed as probably, IBM intended this to come out. There's an earlier engineer of Louis Eggebrecht that was he had a book of interface into the IBM PC and PS2. And he was actually an IBM engineer for the IBM PC. So back in the early 80s timeframe. And IBM felt that he was revealing too many trade secrets about the IBM PC and their inner workings to what they did with the computers, and they fired him. They actually fired him and sued him. They went after him for revealing trade secrets. And so by the time of the PS2s, Louis Eggbrecht was on the outside looking in. His coverage of the PS2s in his book was just an outsider's perspective to not from within IBM to cover those details. So it's very much a thing of what IBM, wanted to protect as far as some of the things that they did, but also Microchannel is a different thing as well. It was one of the first, probably the first enumerated bus types, meaning that each adapter that was produced by any company out there, whether it's IBM or otherwise, had to have an adapter description file. I'm going to raise my boom of my mic so I can cough. And drink a little bit of coffee here to keep my throat going too from talking. So each adapter requires that adapter description file. That's the first start of like the plug and play sort of thing. And the system, when it boots up, it goes through and checks, okay, what adapters do I have that configuration stored away in non-volatile RAM? And how is that adapter configured? Well, if you think about it, a third-party company producing a microchannel adapter, they've got to have a sequence. They can't just randomly pick what's called a POS ID or the adapter ID on their own. IBM has to control that somewhat so that we don't have duplicate adapter IDs out there. And there are a couple actually that slip through and are duplicates. And IBM did have a structure to those adapter IDs or POS IDs. And you can find those lists at the Ardent tool of even to look down through them and find out what adapter, it is. There's even pictures of that. Some of the particular adapters, the well-known adapters, are very documented at the Ardent tool, even to the point of bugs or, and they also have drivers for those different adapters and things like that. One of the common things out there a lot of the time is someone says they bought a PS2 or they found an adapter somewhere and they are not able to tell by the components of the adapter what adapter is that. And we try and explain to them, well, you plug it in and you run this little software sequence and it identifies what adapter it is. And that is what I really like Microchannel for, is the fact that to go through and have those abilities. Now with the Ardent tool, and Mike's bringing up that excellent thing, the QBMCA, the way of identifying the different adapters out there. There's even a utility that was included with PC-DOS. In other words, PC-DOS is from IBM, MS-DOS is from Microsoft. They had that split. And there's a software utility called qconfig. And even in the later areas where PC-DOS may have not been on an IBM system, the qconfig program is mostly focused at a PS2 and how it is configured, showing the configuration, showing the adapters that are installed. On my channel, certainly, we went over the system information tool in the past, even to where, and we call it SIT for system information tool, and what adapters that are known under that utility, and that was IBM developed, even to the point where that had bugs, and Major Tom went in there and corrected those bugs to have re-releases, and even did some outstanding things about expanding the number of slots that the system felt that it had, rather than being a locked-in value, to showing a little bit more of what the adapters are that were attached. Now, on the IBM royalty side, and Major Tom makes a comment, knowing IBM, I doubt it was a fixed percentage, not sure about ESIA. Now, in the book of the Microchannel Handbook, it does discuss that ESIA was reported to be a 5% fee. So even if you didn't go with Microchannel and you developed an ESIA system or an adapter, and there was a lot of vendors out there, Compaq and others, that did ESIA as a result to Microchannel, it appears that royalty fee was higher. For the numbers, taking in mind, it may not be a hard number, but a set percentage, but it looks like that figure is around 3% royalty fees that a company would have had, and that differs for producing a microchannel system versus producing a microchannel adapter. So really, the royalty fees were just not that big of an aspect, actually, and it was more of what were considered the Clone Wars, where where very cheap computers were brought to market that undercut, were very low priced, very stripped down systems that were actually the bigger thing to expensive microchannel system, where it had the performance, not being bought as much. People were just buying cheap clones, and that really cut into the market out there. It was so bargain basement of systems. And I tell people of the story, I've said it on my channel a lot of the time on some of the live streams. They're in the early 90s, and this is probably along the time frame of 92, 93. I had the task of buying a computer for my father, for his business. And I went down to El Paso, Texas, went to the Computer City. Who remembers those locations? And they had an IBM, and I think it was probably even the Ultimedia Mall 57, seen out there on the table. And granted, it had a lot of multimedia components and everything else, and had nice display, everything else. Probably the low end 8557 model, but it was over $3,000. And I had a budget of about $1,000, for my dad, to find him a system. And I thought, man, that's a great system. I was really intrigued by it, but it just wasn't, it didn't fit what we needed to have. And we were, at that point, it was upgrading from a computer with a clone computer with a 286 CPU in it to trying to find something probably with a 486 CPU in it, for being the early 90s. That was starting to become the dominant CPU out there. And so I went over to a strip mall, just a few businesses, fly-by-night places. This computer place was probably out of business the next week after that, or 2 weeks later on. And they called their system the Amida. And it was just a real common generic clone. And it was a 486DX 33 megahertz. Did not include a display, did not include, I think it had a keyboard and mouse. But the interesting thing to me was it had a PS2 Model 30 power supply shoehorned into this case. A 90-watt power supply. And this is not an easy proposition. It was they had to redesign the case to fit in a mechanical on-off button to fit this PSU inside the case, probably because they got a surplus of Model 30 power supplies, and they're running, and even that system was marked with a label that it supported a motherboard with a 486 DX266. So a very high wattage CPU and motherboard. It was a local bus for the display of the motherboard that was in there, that Opti local bus, which is just kind of a budget back in the day. That display boards were the only things that used that. But I thought it interesting that they were cutting corners so bad that they shoehorned a 90-watt power supply into a clone case to be a lower price. That just really threw me. But that was the system I bought, and I still have it around. Actually, I've got it stored away. It's still, the power supply, for being a 90-watt power supply, still is fine, and goes through, and is able to power up that motherboard, which is very out of specs for what a power supply that should have been on that. It should have been a 200-watt or 300-watt power supply instead of just a 90-watt. So, but that's my story in seeing the Clone Wars and what companies that were able to have a computer that would be, effectively a third of the price at a even a higher effective performance level, or had a higher level CPU. And that's what, caused, it was other manufacturers, people left and they didn't get compact computers. They didn't go through and get an ESI system for their receptionist, needing a computer at her desk. They went out and bought a clone for a lower price. So that's what really hit the market. I'm a veteran of the PC Clone Wars, back in the day. I saw the, what happened out there for, and truly, Microchannel is it's the Betamax and of buses, and it lost to VHS for being just a more a different standard that was more economical to produce, a more consumer level that really took off better than what the Sony Betamax, which is a higher performance, was able to do. So, are there any? Is everybody good with where I'm at so far?
You're fine.
I followed the chat a little bit. I don't know if there's really been any questions and everything else. Mike's kept up with links and posts and everything else of
well, actually, that's Steve.
Okay,
Steve's actually the one you can actually thank Steve for putting the displays up and stuff like that. He's actually on top of that.
He's the producer behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm managing the chat, so
that is great. And I don't know, have you guys seen any questions fielded maybe that
I answered one from Eric. Eric he wasn't quite sure what exactly the ADF, how the ADF functioned, and he actually went and downloaded one to examine it, and he said, okay, I see how it is. So
yeah, it's just ultimately a text file that's formatted a certain way that is an adapter description file. It's a file that describes the resources, and IBM refers to those as POS. You'll see, if you look in ADF, you'll see that it has POS and then brackets 1, and then it's got a bit sequence there for what how those POS registers are configured for that adapter. And that can be IRQ resources, IO address resources, DMA a wide variety of just how it's defined for what those POS values mean to that adapter and the system. And that's an ADF. And as Major Tom said, a very similar thing to an ESIA config file. They did the same thing where ESIA had a config file, CFG, that basically told the system, and you run a utility on the computer, the ESIA computer, just like a reference diskette that configured the system from that software angle. You know, I'm sure that there are ESIA forums out there. There's probably locations that you can get those config files these days. But I've always tried to express to people a random ESIA adapter that you find. Yeah, and as Major Tom says, POS registers are essentially jumpers under software control. Just a register of that holds the value, how that adapter is configured instead of putting jumpers. Microchannel is the first plug and play aspect that an adapter can be configured through software. You didn't need to go through and set jumpers. You didn't have to worry about conflicts between resources, between adapters, because the process of going through and configuring the system had the way to identify the conflicts when two adapters tried to use the same IO address or something like that. But, you know, go out there. Oh, Mike's gone to wearing a cat.
Yeah, I have hair.
And who is that?
That's Prada.
Prada. Yeah, that's the main supporting role to Mike's live streams. A lot of time is Prada.
Yeah, he's always here.
But if you have just a random ESIA adapter, try and find the config file out there for it. Try and identify what adapter type it is if it's not clear on the components, the manufacturer, anything like that. You're going to have a hard time, especially finding any driver files and everything like that. For a microchannel adapter, go out there, find a microchannel adapter. I guarantee that there's probably an ADF that's up at the Arden tool for it. There might even be, for the more common adapters, a way. Yep. Mike is holding up an adapter.
Future domain SCSI card.
Future domain, yep. We have, that's got a ROM BIOS on that board. That ROM BIOS is probably imaged at the Arden tool. So if you have a board that didn't have that chip on there and you needed that chip for doing something with the adapter, like having a hard drive on there and be able to boot from the hard drive, you can get that image, and with an EEPROM burner, even with a community out there to say, I don't have an EEPROM burner, can somebody put this image on a chip for me? You can find that person out there, that support out there for Microchannel. So that's the strength of having that resource out there, the Ardent tool and the Microchannel, the community, the SIF news group, the other platforms that have this support out there for a system that's, virtually the same vintage as an ESIA system that Compaq produced, for being able to find the stuff for Microchannel, but, not, I don't know of anybody out there that's developing ESIA boards. ISA boards, maybe. There's some development there and people making adapters and that are new and cover some things that adding solid state to an old system, 286, 386, or whatever. But that is really, and I think all that's going to do is it's going to grow with time for more and more people making microchannel adapters and things like that as time progresses, just to keep those systems a little bit more relevant and working, functional system enough for they do for these hobbyists out there. So, that's my overall take. We and I did that in all less than an hour. So, with some interruptions, but, it's just great. Do we have a count for how many are on
we
the
have
stream
about
now?
13 people watching. Hopefully my microphone is working. You can hear me.
And I always felt that YouTube, I always expressed this. I thought YouTube didn't count properly on some of that, the way I was reading.
Well, you always have to take analytics with a grain of salt.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not real time at all. It's I think it's just a rough estimation.
So I have a question for you, David. Maybe you know the answer to this. So Mike knows this, and you've probably heard me talk about it on one of his streams before. But I got into the IBM PS2 microchannel systems by mistake. I bought a.
That's what we all say.
I bought an Apple Local Talk card, which I thought was a PCI card for PCs, because the eBay seller just said it's an MC card. And I said, well, I have no idea what that is, but it looks like it's PCI, so that's what it must be. And the darn thing came in the mail and clearly wasn't a PCI card. And then I had to find a system that goes with it, etc. But my question is, so I have this card, which is a Dyna or Dana, however you pronounce it, Local Talk card. Yeah. And apparently it is compatible with some type of software, but I don't know what type of software. So what would be the best group for me to reach out to or post on or share this information with to try and find out more information about this card? We have the ADF file, so we know that. But it seems like there was some top software that might have worked with this. But I'm just curious if like you said, there are those Google news groups and stuff like that, or posting groups maybe. But what would be the best place for someone like me who's just getting into this stuff to try and be eased into it without feeling like I'm too stupid?
Yeah. And I say for a little bit more of the technical background, and even a lot of the people that use those adapters back in the day, that's going to be the SIF news group. To make a post on the SIF news group stating exactly what you just said right now. Now the SIF news group, there's been some, and I don't want to define them as old timers, but there's certainly been the resources that were there at one time have dwindled down. And that's also from the aspect of there have been some members that we've lost that have passed away. But I say for that there's still some experts that hang around with that. And really for the technical details of having contacting a group of people that are aware of technical details of the adapters, that would probably be the best forum to express that question in. Now, some of the things, and we do have members on like the Facebook groups and stuff like that. Now, there can be times that I feel that I make a very technical post, and I put it up, and there's not really much response to it on the Facebook group. And I don't equate that to okay, I just went over some people's heads or anything like that. I think that people don't know how to respond to something like that sometimes. And I just have to take it the value that people are going to participate in what they want to participate in. But in that regard, on the Facebook, and that's not detracting from any of the other excellent groups that are on Facebook. There are some vintage computer groups that have very knowledgeable members. They're not microchannel specific, but sometimes in your questions of like Apple Talk and things like that, that may be more relevant in those groups because people have more of a perspective of Apple Talk as it was used on a variety of systems, different platforms, that they may be able to provide a better answer than necessarily a group that's focused on microchannel for being microchannel. And being Apple Talk was a very obscure protocol on the IBM side, especially a direct IBM system with microchannel, that you got to look a little bit more for your experts, I think, out there to in the communities that are out there. And
that's why I was so curious about it, because it is such an oddball thing. I mean, here's the picture of the card right here.
Yep.
And what's interesting is it's a later model because it doesn't have the DB9 connector like the old Apple serial ports. It has the mini DIN 8 connector, or however many pins it is. And so it is that oddity, because Apple actually made one that's an ISA card that has the DB9 connector there, which seems to work fine with the software that I have in my non-PS2 PC. But that's not why we go crazy for these silly things and have fun with them. We want to challenge ourselves to get the damn thing working. So, I will certainly reach out on that group and make a post and introduce myself and drop your name so they know that I'm not that stupid, that I know a little bit. They'll go easy on me then. But thank you.
Yeah, I am members in other groups on Facebook, and I find that those entertaining. I'll bring up even the token ring group and things like that we're talking about as well here, or an aspect of this. Now, my uncle used to work for Artisoft back in the day. You remember the Lantastic product, or maybe some of the people
Lantastic back in the day.
Now, he was just a floor manager and things like that. He did not have an involved knowledge of the product. But the thing I found entertaining one time is I had two of the Lantastic boards that were actually Microchannel. One being a full-length adapter that was an earlier version, and the second, more modern version that was retooled of that adapter being half the size, a very much smaller, just like the Apple Link Apple Talk adapter that you held up, being a lot, being a half-sized card. And he just lit up when I showed him those adapters. Oh yeah, I remember that, retooling the PCB on that adapter to make it a smaller, compact design. You will encounter that at the Art and Tool. You look up an adapter and you see that there are revisions that are covered, in particular to the IBM adapters or other manufacturers, that they went through and retooled and made that circuit board smaller. That saved costs, that cut cost in a lot of regard for the adapters, going through and reusing or being able to integrate a chipset on there that allowed for a more compact PCB. We do have talking about the different connectors on the back, we do have a token ring group on Facebook as well. And very small right now, very few people, but it does cover, and I expressed it as it's the any bus, any platform of system, but we discussed about the token ring aspect rather than the platform it was on. And there's very much similarities between the designs of those adapters for the different platforms. They use the same chipsets and things like that, but we go through and we study the how those adapters have evolved in some sense. And they have a different connector for the older style, a newer connector, better cabling for the later style. And within that group, we actually have he was an engineer at IBM, and he did the token ring microcode. That he's, you talk about a guy that knows the ins and outs of an adapter like that. He worked on the particular microcode of how that adapter ran. So maybe we can encounter something like that with the Apple Talk site as well. Might be somebody out there that just is hanging around the group and can offer a little bit more details, or has used that adapter in the past, like Mike said with the Lantastic product from Artisoft for linking computers together. Now, I wanted to get in. I thought, even with having the Microchannel handbook, I always wanted. I would hope that even some of these very influential people like Chet Heath, Or Ernie Mendici is another one I contacted, and the conversation just kind of just dropped off. I hope it wasn't anything I said, or maybe it was an evaluation of, hey, this is talking about IBM, and I still don't want to reveal those details of my time at IBM, even 20 years later on. But, I want to go through and even just chat at some of these individuals about things of how Microchannel developed. There's supposed to be an initial machine called a system called the Delmarva machine that was a 286 based 286 CPU based Microchannel design platform that they did. And that's how they came up with Microchannel. I have so many questions because we have like the gearbox system that is expressed as being, it reports itself as being a microchannel system, or it has a microchannel bus, although that's a very much different implementation than what microchannel became. But it's, how did these systems derive? How did they get designed? Ernie Mendici, I'm sure he was the one that assembled a lot of those pieces of equipment. I want to know, where's that Delmarva machine today? Does it still exist? Is it tucked away in somebody's closet? And maybe that's the reason that he stopped the conversation too, of, well, yeah, I squirreled it away when I, after I retired from IBM or whatever, that he can't reveal, what he has. But I would love the opportunity to go through and kind of pull those people in and chat with them a little bit about the origins of Microchannel and things like that. I have actually 2 of these books. I was able to locate one before the live stream, and this gives a lot of details. Also on Major Tom's site of the Ardent tool, there's pages on, I saw the question earlier, is it 16-bit? Is it 32-bit bus? Well, it's both. It's the adapters. Sometimes they have a keyway on a 32-bit adapter to be in a 16-bit system. Sometimes those adapters require a certain level of system to run in. But there's pages on the Ardent tool of all the different bus slots to Microchannel. AVE, it's got the auxiliary video extension. It's got a BVE slot, base video extension, when that wasn't built in on the planar. To have the display chipset on that planar, well, you put it on the bus and you have a base video extension, and how those adapters could share information, share that video signaling to be able to do some pretty cool things. And all that is at the Ardent tool. You wade in, you can even find pages in the PS2 section. You found the PS2 model out there that lacks the badge. How do you visually identify that system? What does it look like? Well, there's there's pictures of how drawings that Major Thomas done and how those case styles look, that you can say, oh, that's a Model 25 with the integrated screen. This is some other model. And that includes for the adapters, the planars in the system. And I say planars, that's a motherboard, IBM speak, of where you can have a part or a piece and you can see a diagram and you can see the layout of that board, and just giving a chip component identification that this chip does this, and even some of the details behind the scenes of what that chip may have done, or a code name for what that chip was called for the development at IBM. Even some details as, hey, all the token ring chipsets were named after golf courses that were out there. That's how IBM went through and came up with code names at that level. At some point, there's Chevrolet vehicles of chips being, or adapters being named Corvette, Malibu, things like that. And Star Trek came in later on, OS2 being called a code name of Worf at one point. You have the Spock and the Tribble SCSI ID cards, just all those details behind the scenes that has come out in over time of this stuff being examined, being analyzed. So, yeah, it's just, that's what really pulls me into that so much information out there and so much information being discovered, and still these big communities that are working with these machines and still analyzing and trying to figure out everything to them. Just amazing world. So,
yeah, and unlike some other platforms that were around back then, there's still people nowadays making things for Microchannel too. So as you showed, there's an IDE card, there's an AdLib card, there's a Sound Blaster card now, that are all modern, options. Tech Select sells the sound cards. I actually have I have the AdLib version in my P70. I can't justify spending $120 on a Sound Blaster for a 386.
Yeah.
So, although that IDE card is looking rather tempting. So
yeah, for everything that those adapters do, and I'm sure the price will come down at some point, and more people will jump in development with time. We're at an interesting point in history. We're right on the cusp of basically a hobbyist being able to go in there and sending out for making a PCB of a batch of so many adapters and going through and soldering on chips and being able to sell it.
Yeah, we're way beyond the point of breadboards and solder bodges and everything else like we used to do back in the 80s and 90s. We can draw something up on a computer, send it out to a company like PCBWay or someone else. I know there's a couple here in the States that'll do it for to do prototyping. They do it cheap and fast, so, and it's professional. It's so it's it's pretty amazing. Then you get into we got 3D printers. You can you need a faceplate for your PS2. Oh, just print one or have somebody print one for you. I say, hey, it won't look perfect, but it'll look better than having nothing at all.
Yes.
So
yeah, my 3D printer's been far too idle. I need to get it doing a little bit more. I made a lot of the brackets. People talk about that they need the you don't have an adapter in the slot, and so many of the slot covers were missing, that metal slot cover. What do you put in the place of that? Well, yeah, you can 3D print a cover for that just keeps out the mice and the insects and things like that.
Yeah, I know. I used to have hundreds of those things laying around, and it all that crap just got tossed out when I was kind of being forced to move many, many moons ago. Unfortunately, my 95 kind of went the same way. So, but
sorry, I went muted there for a bit. I was typing a post per David's suggestion, so hopefully they let me into that group, and I didn't do anything wrong by making a conversation.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. So.
Yeah, especially if there's anybody else that's aware of other groups out there. I'm even other platforms out there. I'm interested in hearing about them and participating. I say I'm kind of disgusted with Facebook, but that's kind of the go-to place. I know that there's people like Major Tom or Lewis Olin that you'll never see on Facebook, and that detracts from that a little bit away of them not being in that community but they're in many other places. They're on the SIF news group and things like that as well. So, and on the SIF news group, really, and I don't know, maybe it'd be good to provide the link to the Google Groups page. Used to be the news groups were run by Deja, and I think now they're all under Google management, basically Google Groups. But there's right in your browser, you can go to that news group with the right link, as it's posted, and to find that. And that is, it's 30 years plus of knowledge of the experts. Peter Wendt, an IBM engineer in Germany, and he still pops on the group from time to time, but excellent contributions. I'm not the expert. Even Major Tom recognized we're on the shoulders of the great people that were before us. They are the ones that went in there and created that sense of community and put out the information initially at the very beginning. For the Dallas module modification, where you take the Dremel to that Dallas real-time clock module, Peter Wendt was the first one that I have seen that put that information online. Put a page up and showed, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you modify that chip to add in a battery to keep it working. Even though it was just a few PS2s that happened to use that chip. He came up with a solution that way. And later on, when a lot of the clone systems that use that same real-time clock chip, you see people talking about the modifications and doing that modification now. But Peter Wendt was the first one that did that and put at least put the page out there for people to see. I haven't found anything older than that. I haven't found anybody that jumped in, an earlier time frame from what Peter did. So, it's I'm hesitant to call myself an expert, because all I do is I try and build on what others before me or alongside me have done. And I view even my YouTube channel, I'm just driving people with my content to go to the Ardent tool, because that's the bigger repository of information than what I can provide on my single channel on a video with videos that had a very low production quality, that I just go on camera and just no editing, just post a video out there, for some of the details, but driving out where that information could be found out there on the internet.
Yeah, and you're not kidding when you say that group goes back 30 some odd years. I did a search before I made a post about that microchannel card, and there were people in 1996 who are saying, I have this card for sale. It has all the software and the drivers. Yes. I wish I could find that person now. But I mean, it's interesting to have that history, and a lot of the questions that us newcomers to this platform may be asking, maybe some of those people aren't around anymore, but their wisdom and their information and the posts that they've made are still archived, which I think is fantastic. Because none of us can be around forever, but if we could, share some of that information, I think that's very helpful.
Once it's on the internet, it's on the internet forever for a lot of that news group content. And some of it need to be whipped in shape. I mean, Major Tom is very aware that he'll go through and make a page on something, and he'll be able to have the background, the knowledge to go through and edit certain areas to say, well, actually more complete information is this, different from what it was originally posted as, to a little bit of correction, a little bit of a live documentation as it is, or information that's still edited almost in a wiki style of keeping the information current, having crowdsourced people that are able to go through there and massage that into a little bit more details and things like that. But it's true that the SIF news group was almost in operation, that people were contributing at the time that the PS2s were just ending production in a lot of cases. I went on there for the first time right before the year 2000. And I came in actually from the real-time clock chip aspect, not necessarily those Dallas modules, but the Motorola chip. And I was pulled in by the Y2K stuff that was going around. And so I found the news group through searches, and I just started contributing, and I got pulled in deeper and deeper. Major Thomas mentioning Louis Oland, and Louis, for all his unique traits, I hope he's watching at some level and acknowledging, really for a lot of this. And Louis Oland was the initial person that did effectively the Ardent tool information, getting a website out there talking about the microchannel addictive disorder, or going mad, with the knowledge. Lewis goes through and he talks about, in capital letters, SHIT, super high intensity tinkering. A lot of time Lewis would go through there and have parts and just, let's find out if this works. Let's do an empirical test to go through and to just check this out. So he started a lot of this process as well. He was the original, one of the original guys out there, along with Peter Wendt, that just, he had this concept ahead of his time that this information would be used years and years later. Even Tatsu, hopefully he's on too, over in Japan, that went through, and he expressed here recently on a back channel communication, I didn't realize that so many decades later that someone, a young kid that lived in Europe, would be interested in this stuff. It's, you go through and you write down. I'm actually amazed. I go through the SIF news group, and for some of the stuff that I wrote down, I don't remember it now. I go through and I was like, it's almost like a second person, because I've forgotten a lot of details in some cases, with age and other things. I like, for the fact that a lot of time I documented a lot of the aspects I was touching on with the computers on the SIF news group. I would just write basic little notes of, this is what I did today. I went through, and I can look back at that years later, and it's an excellent, just a logbook, or some indication of, I've made Facebook posts and said, hey, wow, 20 years ago from today, I was doing this that day. And just, it helps me, my memory, and, people ask, what do I like about PS2s? I always answer that I like the community. I like the community of people that work on PS2s. It's not so much of the machines themselves, which are great. It's the people that are still in this hobby, that contribute, that help other people, trade parts, give knowledge, make new adapters, provide information for the systems to be of help and assistance to people. That is what I enjoy about PS2s. So.
I was just looking at I was going back and using the search function on the news group just to see how long I've been doing this, and I've got posts on there going back to 98. So
yeah,
it's kind of like a step back in time, seeing all the names on here, the people I used to interact with, Yep.
And I got on the internet in earnest in 1997. I was not really on I mean, even on bulletin board systems or anything like that, I just wasn't. I even ran a little bit of probably a non-productive bulletin board system for probably few to several months. Just that was the thing to do back then in the 90s. But for the internet side, I got on the internet in 1997 and immediately got into, like I said, within a matter of about 2 years or less, I found the SIF news group, and that has really changed a lot of aspects. Probably has made me more, has pulled me into more into the IT world and the things that keep me employed, gainfully employed these days. Still working with computers is thanks to those initial things getting me into this hobby. And Retro Techie, that's fine. Whether you're born or not.
Oh, he's older than that. He's just being an idiot.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing that strikes me, just even fairly young people that are get interested in these systems that are older than they are. And that is just fascinating to me as well. I mean, I'm happy when that happens. So, I mean, we show our age. I kept my cap on for this discussion, but you see the white in my beard and everything else. I'm getting to the point of being one of those old timers as it is, but I can wear that label just fine. Yeah. So, were we supposed to see your email? I don't know if that's talking about me or someone else.
My emails from back then are so dead now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And my initial participation on the SIF news group, and still Google hides. They try and conceal a lot of the email addresses that are used for posting, of course, on the news groups. But those email addresses for me are dead too. I mean, they're long gone through. Now, on that front, I don't mind, and I'll rather than spell it out where it can be harvested and everything else, I don't mind people going through and contacting me at IBM Museum at gmail.com. I'm open. I am contacted that way. I don't mind in Facebook. Sometimes you have to send me something else for me to know that you sent me a message on Instagram or Facebook Messenger or something like that. But I don't mind contact. I don't mind people contacting me. Go somewhere with it, with the question. I answered one recently that somebody said, I have a question. I say, okay, what is the question? And then post a few hours later saying, I have a question. And it's like, okay, ask your question. I still haven't figured out what that question is a week later now, but I don't know if they just lost track of the conversation or whatever else didn't follow through, but I don't mind someone going through and contacting me via email or something else, some asynchronous method that I can go through and I can respond to that whatever question they have, and I can go through and direct what I feel to the appropriate place for them to be able to answer that question. So that's just the power of the my part in the community at large. I know of many others that are willing to go to the same lengths of being contacted and answering questions if it's not something that's already documented out there at the Ardent tool. And we need help too. You know, I mean, people find these new, sometimes they find these adapters that, you know, they don't have a known ADF somewhere or some other information. By all means, if you have something to contribute, you know, contact us for us to go through and work with that, add to the information that we have.
Maybe you could help idiots like me who get these errors.
I can't read that on this screen.
It says an error occurred while reading the option adapter file for slot 3, you know.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
But, you know, and sometimes ADFs can be corrupted. Sometimes reference diskettes, as we talked previously, can be corrupted from operating. They can, sometimes ADFs can be in a different format than what is expected. But a lot of time you're able to narrow it down because you say, oh, slot 3, and you know what adapters in slot 3. And, you know, to me, it helps, even though we deal with hardware like diskette drives that fail and things like that, you know, commonly now. So, you know, it's, we can help with errors. There's actually and that was the joke on the last stream with Mike, was that somebody said, oh, without looking it up, tell me what error code is. And they were just making up the error code, but I posted the link to the Ardent Tool page of PS2 error codes. You're getting an error on your machine, go to the Ardent Tool and you can look up that error, and it's right on every time. You know, that it'll tell you exactly what causes that error. The other aspect I've brought up on my channel, if you have a PS2, even just one, get a parallel port postcode reader on eBay. You know, it's a challenge for the people that live outside the United States, but for $10, less than $10 USD, United States dollars, you can get that diagnostic tool on eBay that you plug it into your parallel port. Every PS2 has a parallel port on it, at least one, that gives a code if your system is stopping even before it gets a display, is able to display the error code. You know what that code means for that parallel port postcode reader. So there's excellent utilities we can direct people to have for diagnosing their machines.
So let me ask a question here, because similar to my situation of getting into these machines, I knew nothing about them. But you know, I had a friend, Mike, who knew quite a lot about these systems. But let's say I'm just getting into these IBM systems, these microchannel systems, these PS2 systems. What would your advice be for the first step to take, whether it be joining a group, or is there an introduction video that a YouTube channel has that you like or something like that, just to learn the basics? Now I'm talking about, I know nothing about DOS or anything else.
Yeah. And so and I wish, that's the reason I wanted to get back into my channel, of course, because I look forward, and I went through, even in my chatter with friends and things like that. Okay, I went on your channel and I had to bring up, hey, I've got that well enough organized into playlist on my channel, for one. I need to go through and timestamp a lot of videos, actually, for one, to go through and being able for people to quickly find information and not get caught in the minutia of, you know, for a particular answer that they're looking for. I would say, really, for one, you just went out there and you found a PS2 Model X out there at your Salvation Army store or something like that. One of the first things I want to say is, or the first steps that you would do is go to the Ardent tool and look up that information on the Ardent tool. The Ardent tool even has a search function on it that Major Thomas put in place that you can type in really just any sort of part number or something else that you're looking for, and it's going to give you the results. And so there, with IBM systems, you have a model submodel code on that label that's right close to like a power supply switch or like lower right corner. It varies in location depending on model. But you have, the first 4 digits are the model 8557 dash, and then the last 3 characters of that model submodel, DEB. Well, that code can tell what the CPU is on there, what the hard drive capacity is, depending on the level of PS2s out there, of course, of whether it's a newer PS2 or an older model. But on the Ardent tool, you can quickly drill into the model that you found out there that this store had, that you bought the system for, hopefully a low enough price or something else, or found on eBay, that you can go on the Ardent tool and you can drill down to that information on that model. You can see what adapters are there. That's basically the start of the journey. Conversely, there's also the Facebook groups. We've had people pop on the group to say, here's a picture of what I have. Tell me what it is. Or a seller that,
it's a computer.
That does a picture and what's the value in this, or looking to sell off the item or something else. Now, attached to that Facebook group, we also have a for sale or in search of group as well that's attached to that group that people can go through if they're selling please be on topic, for the part or system that you're selling. But we do have that attached side group that people can put for sale advertisements and or even a part that they're looking for. Guys, I'm looking for this particular obscure part. I've been unable to find it. Can anybody help? So that's the way there. You can make a post on the Facebook group or on the SIF news group to say what you have. And I think the community is very responsive. They're not going to come back at you and respond in a mean way to you, like I see on some of like the 3D printer groups and stuff like that, that somebody prints something, 3D print something, and the name of the group is functional 3D printing, and people responding, is it functional? Or the response of, is it food safe, is the big joke with 3D printing as well. They print an item that's a spoon, I 3D printed. Well, is it food safe? Is it made out of a material for the 3D printer that makes it food safe? You're not going to get, you shouldn't get a bad response, although, and that's part of the moderation I do on the groups too. If someone is coming back and being snarky at you for asking what they're calling a dumb question, let me know, and we can go through and we can handle it and everything. But I tend to think you're going to get your answer. You're going to post on the SIF news group, you're going to post on the Facebook group, or you're going to look over the Ardent tool, or you're going to use my email address that I provided earlier, to send me a question. Well, you're going to get directed in the right places to find the answers that you want.
So to answer a question that Jay posed here, and he may have missed out when we were discussing this, there's tons of projects for PS2s that probably are close to rivaling ones for the Mac. I mean, we have new adapter cards being made, like the one that Steve showed off the other day, the IDE card, the MC IDE card. That's a brand new card based on the XT IDE open source project. There's an AdLib card, the Resound 2. There's a Sound Blaster card called the Snark Barker, since a real Sound Blaster card is thousands upon thousands of dollars. Blue SCSI is universal, so anything that uses SCSI can use a Blue SCSI. So, I mean, you could say that's for the PS2 community too. And there's battery Dallas clock replacements people have made, or I mean, you can modify one too. I mean, it's just the battery that goes bad in them. So
yeah, and we're going to bring up points there. I mean, there's a lot of things to that question that are or that phrasing that are kind of neat. Now the aspect of Blue SCSI, that universality, we also have the SCSI 2 SD, solution. And there's been chatter of, hey, is the Blue SCSI compatible with PS2s? Or somebody saying, I have a Blue SCSI board, I've not been able to get it to work. Or even older versions of the SCSI 2 SD, they have problems with it. Or, these IDXTE for the MAL 30 level. Well, I can't get it to go. I can't get it to work in my EduQuest system. And so it allows in the forum to those groups on Facebook to ask the questions of, knowing whether something's compatible or what problems you can run into with that. One of the problems that you can run into with that real-time clock replacement, people say, oh, my Dallas module just went flat on my PS2. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to buy a new 12C, whatever, Dallas module, 887, 12C 887 for my PS2. Well, I'm sorry, that's not going to work because, you need to learn about the century byte being what the location where it's held on that real-time chip to realize that that's not going to work. That part is not compatible with a PS2. So there's, there's detail that can help people. Now the development, and I've had an idea even for probably the last 3 years, and I haven't ran with this in the way that I need to do it. I've almost held it under the cover and everything else. I had a group on, I'm trying to think who hosted that location, but I was paying $100 a month for this group of development ideas I had. I went through, maybe I need to, despite all the hacks at GitHub, maybe I need to revise some of the things on GitHub for the projects I had in mind. But I came up with the idea of called a PS2 portal, an adapter. And you got to think in the PS2s now, what is the common failure items that we experience? Diskette drives, hard drives not being functional. And that's a problem on PS2. When you have a reference diskette that you have to run on your PS2 and you have a bad diskette drive, how do you do that? So with PS2s, besides the pluses that those things can, those computers can have, they also have a detraction in some areas. That the diskette drives being proprietary, they fail more often. You can't buy a replacement. Well, some people like Mark Malley that did the MC IDE adapter have also done diskette drive adapters, that you can put a conventional diskette drive in your PS2. But I looked at the PS2 portal being an adapter that could be developed. And that adapter also has a network connectivity out to that as well, to a box that you have in your house. That connection and that adapter on your system can basically help with the configuration of the PS2. If your PS2 is not configured, you go through and it does a bootloading sequence over that network connection to the little box to load the configuration onto that PS2 and make that a working system again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, instead of a reference diskette, you have basically a little host adapter card that you put in there that handles that activity. It mimics the diskette drive. It even can mimic the hard drive of the system, because we have out there, and RetroTech Chris and Kevin Moonlight are, I was speaking of Basecamp, Chris, but they're going to be at VCF East this next upcoming VCF East, and they're going to talk about iClass, the IBM Classroom LAN Administration Server. And that was IBM's back in the day in the school system. They had an iClass server, typically a Model 95 or Model 85. That was the server, and the kids had these Model 25s and EduQuest systems that they didn't even have. They didn't have to have a local drive, a local hard drive on the system. The kid powered the switch on, and it booted over the network, what IBM calls Ripple, RPL, or I like to add the I, or IPL. I pronounce it Ripple, Remote Initial Program Load, that you don't have to have a hard drive or a diskette drive on your system. And when it boots over the network, that box handles everything that student needed to have, menu items, classroom lessons, whatever else. The big thing with older systems nowadays is we talk, hey, I want to get that system online. And we have retro web developers and things like that out there that have set up things like that. But also that proxy box that is to the PS2 portal that you're booting over that connection. So that little box is basically like a proxy as well, going through to connect that older system up to the internet. Kind of a cool thing. Firewalling could even be where you have a token ring adapter on your PS2. And PS2s, the other detraction side of things, the microchannel bus in particular, is that Ethernet network boards, you're going to find 10 megabit per second adapters. It's going to be the maximum that you can put on a microchannel bus. You can't find 100 base Ethernet boards to work on your PS2. Well, Token Ring was two ring speeds, 4 megabit per second or 16 megabit per second. And also Token Ring is more efficient than older Ethernet, that you don't have collisions and things like that. 16 megabit beats 10 megabit per second with the network board. And so on those systems, it makes more sense to have a Token Ring adapters for all your PS2s around. If you have a bunch of them like me, that box in there for the PS2 portal could also be a bridge from Token Ring to Ethernet, that aspect of it. So, I'm looking forward. Maybe I need to get out there and try and develop that idea a little bit more of, I think really it's come to the point where we need a new adapter being developed that actually can go through. And with the microchannel bus, it can be even enhance the processor functions of the system as well. Could have a processor there that helps out the processing power of the PS2 and makes it a more functional system. So, but, really for that VCF East presentation that Chris Lenderman's going to do for RetroTech Chris, go see it. Go to VCF East like I did. I went back in what was the trip that I did, Chris, in 2021?
Yeah,
in October. And hopefully I can go through and get on this next time it comes up. But I went over there. Chris really was a fantastic host, put me up. Even picked me up at the wrong airport. I wasn't. I made a mistake and flew into the wrong place, other than what he directed. And he. It was all. It didn't. He didn't get upset with that or anything else. He just reacted to the occasion and picked me up at the wrong place. And was a great host for my time being over there, and also picking all the stuff that I had him shipped to him and everything else for me to bring it back home. But I came home and that Chevy Malibu rental was loaded, and it took me 3-4 days to get across the US from that. But I made the trip. It was an experience for me. I really enjoyed that trip and doing that. Hopefully I can do that again. But I want people to go through and see that presentation that Retrotech Chris and Kevin Moonlight are going to do at VCF East on iClass. And Chris's channel is fantastic as well. Retrotech Chris, look it up on YouTube. That if you want to boot any old vintage computer up over whatever mechanism, be it serial, be it Wi-Fi, retrofitted board that's in there, even over a modem connection or something else, Chris is the one to watch because he's already done that. He goes through and explains very well how people can do that. They can boot a system, not even necessarily to iClass. He's done other methods as well, even on the Windows side, which is just amazing, of remote, of going through and doing that Ripple boot process from a vintage system to boot up and load the OS. I talked about iClass. You have the kid at the school has, there's rows and rows of this PS2 Model 25s, that 8086 CPU on those, and those units don't even have a real-time clock on them. But it boots over the network, and that doesn't matter because you get your time setting for the computer from that server. You're loading your entire DOS OS over the network. So that limitation doesn't matter anymore. And it increases the functionality, since all those, that was a concept that was ahead of its time as well, that client server model, that you had everything on the server side, all the processing power, all the programs, all the OS that could be loaded, and your system, for all the limited capabilities, is turned into a terminal that's able to get, the ability to function over that network. And I think it's a big concept that really could be developed on the microchannel side, to keeping and being able to configure a PS2 without necessarily needing a reference diskette, and being able to even get that system online for the retro web, and protect that with the proper firewalling and other things to make that still enough of a functional system to get it online. And that's really amazing for PS2s being 35, in some cases over 35 years old at this point, to be still being a functional system in this case.
So Dave, Jay has another question here. And I don't know how to answer, because my answer to him would probably be, I don't suggest it, but he wants to know what would be a good reason for anyone getting into this, to try messing with him. And you have to realize you're talking to Jay here, and Jay absolutely abhors PCs. So it would have to be an extremely compelling reason for him, which probably still wouldn't be enough. But
yeah. And we call it the microchannel addictive disorder, MAD, that you go mad, that you go, the thought is you go crazy. If you like solving problems and issues, and you like going round and round with them to get them to work, microchannel's right up your alley, PS2s. And people express that. As I say, even Clint from LGR, he has an uneasy relationship with the PS2 line of computers, because they can be very troublesome as well. To me, I go in for the reverse reason. I like going through and solving problems and improving things and figuring out how things work. If that's not for you, I don't advise getting involved in PS2s, or really, in the case of a lot of older systems, that that can be just a thing, a challenge. You know, I'm not an auto mechanic. I don't go through. I don't tinkering with old cars doesn't really appeal to me, and that's for any employment aside, Mike. I'm not someone that goes through and tinkers with cars and enjoys that as a hobby, but I do that on the computer side. That you know, that's it. It doesn't seem, when it comes to cars, I wouldn't get involved that way, but I do for computers. So my advice, yeah, if you don't really view that stuff, if you don't like tinkering with computers, I wouldn't advise getting involved in this hobby or with those machines.
Yeah, they're extremely frustrating. Let's just put it that way.
So you look at
if you don't understand what you're doing, they can be extremely frustrating, and they can definitely test your patience.
Yeah, if you look at me, Mike, and Steve, we've all pulled our hair out, and now we get to go through and we get to pull at our beards.
Sure, that's what happened.
In frustration.
I thought you were going for dinner.
Yeah, I'm leaving in a bit, but I wanted to appear and say thank David for the chat before I bail for dinner.
Yeah, and we're coming on 2 hours. I mean,
yeah, I'm probably going to cut this short here soon anyway.
Yeah, certainly. You know, I like talking about this and everything else, but you know, all good things have to come to an end as well. And once we, you know, Mike's been doing this collaboration on streams for a very long time, and always has a great cast of hosts and everything else. Even a group live stream, you know, that he doesn't necessarily, that's even run from a separate channel and everything else, more of a community effort. This is my first step into something like this of collaborating, even for me having what I tend to think is a very active channel. I've gone over 1,500 subscribers now, and I need to jump back into that. And as I say, you know, my intent, as it comes up in the future, I'd really like to build up my other channel. The handle of, you go to YouTube at IBM Museum, you're going to see that channel with 2 subscribers that has virtually no content. As I say, I did a people can watch. I think I posted a video, my dash cam video, front and back, of somebody here in town pulling out in front of me. That just as a test, I'll probably pull that down. But that's the channel to that I'd ask, you know, if you're a subscriber to my channel currently, and by all means subscribe to that more active channel, but also join up to that channel that has the 2 subscribers, increase my subscriber count on that. And that is the channel that I really want to develop. I don't want to rename my channel that I have right now. I want to just build on the other one. It has the handle that's more appropriate as a default. You know, it's kind of interesting. Years ago, it went through, and how that got created, I wasn't in the process of posting any content at that point. It was just a side thing. I thought, well, I'll sign up for that. And then later on, when I created my channel, you know, YouTube said you've got to have it as 2 separate words. Well, I don't like that. But, you know, subscribe to that channel. I'll be posting more content. I'll be doing much more of these collaborations with people like Mike and everything else. I recognize the bigger channels that are out there, just as I've been involved with Curious Mark, which is also a fantastic channel. That is what has gotten me probably 1/3 of my subscriber base. It's just my interaction with Curious Mark and other big video channels to grow. And the sky's the limit. You know, I've set back for too long with the channel inactive, and I need to go through and jump back in. And I look forward to doing more of these collaborations in the future.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you'll get the muscle back for it. Like you were saying at the beginning of the show, your time shifted. You weren't able to do it at the time slot you were regularly doing it at. But things happen, things change. You're going to be flexible, and hopefully you'll be able to come back and create some content there. And
Yes,
it's just how it is for all of us.
Yeah,
Mike was doing a lot of pre-recorded videos, and I was doing a lot of pre-recorded stuff. But now we do streams more because they're easier.
Yeah.
So you just ebb and flow there, and see what works.
Yeah, and I'll jump back into my own live streams at time. I use the job as an excuse. It is supposed to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Although I'm IT in this world, and that's the things that we have to pay the bills out there, our real jobs and everything else. I'm happy to be gainfully employed. And really it's a great job, and it's good hours. I could have done more streaming and more effort into my YouTube channel if I would have wanted, but I had the ability to use this as an excuse. I think from here there's still a lot of stuff that we have to do on the job, but I think my Saturdays will start to get free, though I can plan a little bit better and say, hey, I've got that free time. Working for local government's good too. I get those holidays of President Day and things like that are paid, and but I still would have effectively free that I could start using as a time frame to do some more videos and things like that. I've got a lot of unboxings. I received a lot of packages over the last 6 months that I actually just truthfully just saved away, didn't even open them. And I'll get into that and start doing more videos as well. So look to see me out there. I appreciate subscriptions that I get to my channel, and I know that will that channel will grow better if I'm able to focus some attention back on the channel and move forward from here.
Well, you forced some IBM knowledge onto Jay, so that's something to be proud of. But I'm gonna bail out for dinner here. But you guys continue. Thank you, David, for coming on, and I'm sure I'll be pestering you with questions sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks for joining in, Steve.
Yep. Take care, guys.
So I think I'm going to go to the outro here because it's 2 hours now,
and that's a good point. It's that's a good point to end it. I think it was a very productive stream, and we saw a little bit of participation there and answered some questions, and we have the ability to do more later on.
Yes, always. So thank you to David for being here, and thank you for everybody who was in the chat participating, and hopefully you all learned a little something.
Yeah, and thanks to you, Mike, for providing the opportunity as well, and for prodding me on to go through and to do something like this.
So, and maybe we'll do this again sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks to Dave. Thanks to Steve. And we'll do this again. If you guys like this kind of content, let me know. And again, I'm not all Macs. So in the news on my channel, I have not been extremely active lately, and that is primarily because I just don't really have anything to do. I'm waiting on parts for my compact portable at the moment. I do have a Linux computer here that I need to fix, but I don't know if I'm going to stream that. I've had issues with my streaming computer. It just decided to go off the deep end, and truthfully, I'm just stripping it for parts at this point. I'm tired of messing with it. It's old and ever since the mice got in it, it's just been a nightmare. So I'm just going to strip the part from it. So, replace it with something else in the future. But yeah, and I've also been thinking about changing the name of my channel because I don't just focus on Macs. So I've been toying with the idea. If anybody has any suggestions, let me know.
Yeah, and I was
I'm
joking
always
earlier when I
idea.
said that you can be the Mike's MCA shack.
Yeah,
I think that's a little bit more limiting there too.
yeah, that's a lot more
but-
limiting.
but that's just-
I have more Macs than I have I only have 2 PS2s, and one of them's so buried right now. I'm not even sure if I could get it out if I had to. That's my 50Z.
Yeah, the only thing there is you only have to flip 2 letters to do that. So
Yeah. So, oh, so I want to wish everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you, and we'll do this again sometime.
Yep.
So enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe to both Mike's Mac Shack, Mac84, and IBM Museum,
and Steve's channel.
That's Mac84.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So have a good evening, guys. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.